So, Ian, esports are all the rage.
Yeah, and they're also, it seems like they're a freaking mess.
Well, it's the growing pains of a quote-unquote sport in its infancy. You see, when organized sports, whether it's football or baseball, they start with like these leagues, and these leagues have rules and they have committees that define what goes into the tournaments and the play and the games. So the problem so far is that there's not like a unified body really defining all the various tournaments and competitions.
So like an NFL or something.
Yeah.
Like
so it would, like, for example, there's a bunch of different mixed martial arts organizations, not just UFC.
Sure.
But there's one unified code of rules that encompasses just about all of them, that they abide by 95% of them. Whether it's, remember, they had Pride in Japan, and they had UFC here, and there's Bellator. So all of them said, like, no eye gouging, no fish hooking, no stuff like that, no like neck strikes. Everyone abide by those rules. The whole point is this: there's no one defining no eye gouging for esports right now. There's no. It's by tournament what goes on.
Right, by event,
which you don't want. Obviously, you want it to be unified, so there's no shenanigans. So everyone plays by the same rules, and everyone knows. So, WESA.
Oh, stop, please.
WESA is a new foundation coming about that's trying to be like, it's the World Esports Association. It's supposed to try to create this unifying body to oversee and be the ruling body for all of esports. And they're trying to get going with this. There was a press conference. They did it in London to go over what they're going to do. But there's major problems with this. Here's the first problem. Half of WESA is owned by ESL, which is the world's biggest esports network that's getting up started. So right away, you should not have a network running esports being involved with an organization overseeing esports.
No.
That's a huge fucking conflict of interest.
That'd
obviously.
be like ESPN having
money, NFL,
right?
And it's like, wow, you couldn't see potential corruption or maybe favoritism on what you're showing on the network on some events versus the others. It doesn't make any sense.
Here's problem 2. You have 8 pro teams that get to basically come together and help decide on the policy of what these tournaments and these rules, these ground rules are going to be. Keep in mind that it's not just 8 teams playing, it's 8 teams speaking for hundreds.
So it sounds like you're going to have these 8 teams as part of the council, then you're going to have another body separate from the teams. But the whole point is that you should not have teams, you should not have the big power. These are like powerful teams too, obviously, that they're asked to do this. You should not have them potentially making judgments about policy or rules of tournaments they play in, because obviously, again, they're not impartial, and maybe they're going to have rules that favor themselves. It's just bad form. It would be like if the NBA, if their players association was like 5 teams instead of members from all teams.
Right.
So, not saying it would happen, but you could potentially then come up with a set of rules that could favor the people that are making the rules. It's just the look of impropriety. Sometimes that's all you need. The perception of something being bad or corrupt is all you need. Once you get that far, it's over. You should drop it or try again. So there was this great GameSpot. I transposed a couple letters there. GameSpot interview with the founder here of it, or one of the founders. His name was Reichart. And it brought up some good questions. Like, in order for WESA to be legitimate, shouldn't it be independent from active esports teams? I mean, that's pretty common sense to me.
Yeah.
And Reichart's response is, I honestly don't think so. Honestly, you don't think so? Come on. Can you say I dishonestly don't think so because that would be more accurate, I think.
Right. Why would that be okay in the slightest? You have a small body of teams that are going to compete with a larger body of teams that get to dictate policy. And he continues to try to downplay that their involvement is going to be minimal, but any is too much.
But money comes from the pro teams to fund this WESA to even operate. That's the problem.
That's another issue, is that, yes, there's money going into it. And also, allegedly, coming out just today or a few days ago, teams were paid as much as $150,000 to join the body.
To get it started.
So there's money going both ways.
And supposedly you have other tournaments like taking snipes and jabs at this WESA because, okay, this WESA starts up. I run a tournament. I've been doing it for years. Why the fuck do I got to abide by what they say? Why do I have to do that?
Especially if it's a respected long-running tournament. I don't need... At this point, I don't need you.
I don't... And especially if I don't agree with your rules or think they're ethical, why do I have to abide by them? What's in it for me?
Mm-hmm.
So this is really weird. Because usually when you have these organizations come up, you have to have everyone agree on it, first of all. Or they have to then be like, for example, going back to like boxing commission and stuff, they have to sanction events. The power comes from the state or government for them to sanction events. Here, it's the opposite. You have events already going on. They don't need to be sanctioned by anyone. And this is now WESA trying to force themselves into be part of the sanctioning of the rules, the governing body. It's really weird and backwards, especially if you have only a limited number of pro teams part of the committee of WESA. I don't see this working out at all. Not at all. Like, this is going to be laughed at.
No, it already is being laughed at. This is a nightmare of a mess. And what I found to be just, I mean, absolutely preposterous was he kept trying to compare himself to FIFA.
Rijkaard? Yeah, that's
a great fucking organization to try to put yourself in the same league as.
If you guys didn't know, if you don't follow sports, FIFA is extremely corrupt. The president that they just forced out is under investigation from the U.S.
Yeah.
So you don't want to compare yourself to FIFA. FIFA does not have a strong reputation at all. So again, this good reporter at GameSpot is saying, like, you don't see a conflict of interest in this at all when these 8 teams are helping define the rules. And they say, well, they're not defining the execution of the rules, just the rules themselves. So that makes it better then. You know, it's just, you cannot have any semblance of either favoritism or corruption when it comes to any competition.
Right.
And this just smells of it.
Well, when you have 8 teams on there, you automatic whether it's going to or not, it's the appearance of it. It looks like that's favoritism for these 8 teams, no matter what way they got picked and put up there.
And reportedly, one of the 8 teams is already pulling out of it. FaZe.
Yeah, they've ditched the newly formed governing body, even if it will cost them. They will have to fork over $50,000 to ESL and WESA for their departure, and good for them. They smell that this is BS. I mean, we're looking at 6 months maybe before this is a laughable footnote in esports history.
Sure. At some point, there's going to have to be a governing body, but it's tough, especially when these competitions are international.
Right.
You know, they're not just all in the U.S. They're not all just in Europe or South America or Asia. I'm not sure how it's going to happen. I think you're in a weird sort of point right now where it's not like baseball or football. You know, these are games started in like the 19th century or early 20th century where they start from, groundswells, farms, and then they slowly come together, form rules, slowly form leagues. This is already multi-million-dollar tournaments going on, and you have networks coming without any of the, I would say, ethical or moral infrastructure in place to get to this point. It would be like if the NFL all of a sudden had multi-billion-dollar TV deals within the first 5 years of it existing, not after 80 years of it existing. You know, these aren't baby steps. They're now taking these giant leaps towards legitimacy, having networks, having these tournaments, being on ESPN2, without even having a governing body to establish rules and practices. I don't know. I think the genie's out of the bottle. Because there's too much money at stake now to decide for these tournaments to say all of a sudden we're going to go by whatever you say.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's already money being made. I don't know if it's ever going to happen.
Well, no, I just
very
feel like
complicated.
it's not every aspect of esports needs to mimic a real sport, and I feel like it might be too late for what they're trying to do.
But you definitely need a ruling committee. You should for having a unifying set of rules. I totally believe you should have that.
I don't necessarily disagree, but I think it just goes back to how at this point. How do you wrangle everything together? The world of esports is too big.
It's probably going to have all the major tournaments coming together, and it's going to have to be no teams involved, or if the team's involved, it has to be individual players wrangled around the same way they have player associations, and then the major tournaments have to have representatives from each, and then hash something out.
I was going to say, that's the only way I can think of it, is the big tournaments come together and kind of dictate how this works.
Hash out
not teams.
Hash out like a loose constitution, but then you're also, it's also the fact that these tournaments and these games are entirely different. So do you have a unifying body for first-person shooters, for Counter-Strike versus the MOBAs? You know what I mean?
Well, that's how you're gonna have to do it. You can't just call all esports when the different games are so very different. You can't compare Counter-Strike Go to something like League of Legends or StarCraft. They're entirely different games. It's like trying to have hockey and football and soccer all under one body.
All right, we'll see what happens with that.